Um, starting out, I was very surprised to hear about like the segregation of public housing and the way it kind of started. Did not know that people paid rent. That was very much left out of the brief little snippet that we talked about in history class in high school. Um, and then the way desegregation and integration was weaponized in like post World War II era, um, to try to kill public housing, and then the way that kind of got flipped was interesting. Sorry, I have a getting over a sinus infection, so I probably sound really bad on camera. But I also was very surprised. I guess I didn't really know about the steps that desegregation of schools took. Um, like pre Brown v. Board of Education, that it was like law school, college and university, and then K through 12. Um, I also am not really familiar with our like local zoning policies, but I know we're not great at integration. Mostly on the fact that there aren't a whole lot of racial minorities in Ravenna, and besides like the village itself, it's very spread out, very rural area. I'm not sure how much it would change in terms of like there already not being a big population of people of color in Ravenna. Um, but it definitely would help those who live here get enmeshed in the community. In particular, there is that I know of a group of Hispanic families that are very much together in one kind of like area that aren't necessarily super like connected to the rest of the community. Um, so mixing that, um, the income levels might help with that a little bit. Although it's hard to say with not a lot of people living in the village or living close to each other. Um, I feel like the color of law was a really interesting and good overview of the situation and what would be the result of all these things in the past, especially that we don't think about. I think that maybe adding on to it, looking into kind of more sociological reasons, um, biases retained, or like the concept of self segregation and kind of where that comes from and why that's still kind of a thing and how that affects all of this, would be a really interesting addition rather than like it needing like a huge change or there's something really wrong with the color of law as it is right now, in my opinion. Yes, being like segregated and not having an integrated community or school, um, definitely impacts um, interracial friendships, multiracial friendships, in a bad way. Definitely makes it harder to have them. And also, those who do have them, like, suffer because of, like, ostracization, which is difficult, but not having the opportunity to make those, um, kind of doesn't give you a chance to develop that kind of empathy across racial lines, because you're just not with people who are not the same race as you. It can lead down the road feeling really strange or even fearful when moving into integrated spaces, whether that be college, a bigger city, um, walking through town and being scared just because you're in a quote unquote bad neighborhood that's just lower income or majority minority, um, which is then really hard to unpack because it's something that is like deep within you that you've learned since you were very little because you lived in a and went to school in a very non-integrated space. Um, I would want to know like why Ravenna of all places. Especially well, on both sides, both the family members that have been here for a long time in America and those who have recently come over from Europe, like why there? Was racial makeup any part of it? I know that we, on my mother's side, have been at the farm for at least 100 years, so like that might be less of it in like the more modern, like public housing, redlining kind of thing. But it's just, I don't know. I'd love to know. Um, I wasn't very surprised that Chief Justice John Roberts got some of his facts wrong. Um, a lot of that requires some kind of in depth digging and really examining things. Um, that can be uncomfortable, especially as a white person who has benefited from those policies, even though you would hope that as your job and as a Supreme Court justice, as the Chief Justice, you would be, sorry, this is shaking so bad, familiar with these things. It is something you kind of have to dig into because it is something America does not like to talk about and does not like to look at. It can also be a lot of work if you're not familiar with these policies or if you're like kind of familiar. Hopefully, he would be more familiar with them, but like the state of the US education system. And also, might not be something that the Supreme Court justices have a lot of time for to really in depth and dig deep beyond just the facts of the case that is presented to them. Uh, Again, you would hope, but also they're really busy with a lot of cases. They get a lot of cases submitted to them. They don't have time to really dig deep beyond what is presented in the case itself. So getting just enough to feel like they've made the right decision is kind of as much as we can expect and kind of hope for that. I didn't really know a lot of this besides like the basics like redlining, desegregation of like schools and public facilities and that kind of stuff. Um, because like we didn't really talk about it. And well, we did talk about like my history teachers, state educators, and lawmakers, all of them have kind of made the same mistakes or similar mistakes that Chief Justice John Roberts made and are just either uneducated about it or don't care to dig deeper and then it gets passed on to students or just things just don't get passed on. Most of what I've learned more than the basics has been through my own investigating, through video essays, through things online, through investigating things myself rather than sitting down and learning in a class, which is disappointing. Um, I guess my kind of unanswered question, if I had to have one, would really be just like what is stopping us from putting in policies that down the line, because housing is something that is very long term, um, that is desegregating, or more, not necessarily desegregating, but integrating people into communities. And like it's 2024, almost 2025. Like it's been a long time coming. We know this is wrong. We know this is bad for people. Like, what's the holdup? And yeah.